Hello and welcome back. So today, right now I will discuss My Last Duchess. It is a poem which I had read in college, and since then it has remained in my mind. And even then we were pretty shocked by the attitude which is expressed in this poem. But of course there's the thing like, the time frame, because the absolutely horrifying attitude of the Duke, who is speaking in the nobleman, the aristocrat, who is of noble blood, who is so proud of his lineage, and his misogynistic attitude, his sense of privilege, his arrogance, his ego, which is almost monstrous, had created an impression on us even as college girls. And now, even after so many years, and when reading it back, the same impression comes back, because that usually when you read something and then you come back to it after years, you can find that you read it differently, or it creates a different meaning for you. But this poem, the impression, the meaning, the idea which it conveys has remained unchanged. And this is Robert Browning's expression of, or his powerful depiction of an abnormal personality, an abnormal mentality, for whom human feelings simply do not exist. That cruelty and that egotism is ingrained in him. Perhaps it is inculcated by centuries of conditioning, mental conditioning, and there was this abnormality which existed in many royal and noble aristocratic families because of inbreeding, because of their consciousness of their exclusive inheritance or whatever. But it did not leave any room for normal, wholesome, healthy, and tender emotions. And this Duke, in this poem, in this dramatic monologue, is a perfect example of a misogynistic, egoistic, patriarchal, arrogant, and extremely proud to the point of monstrosity personality, because Robert Browning was interested in such characters. Robert Browning, time frame 1812 to 1889, and this poem came out in 1842. Very easy rhyme scheme of heroic couplets, and it moves very easily. And of course we hear the Duke's voice, and as he goes on speaking, the situation unravels itself. That is the idea of a dramatic monologue. So, and it's very straight to the point, the title as well as the presentation of the theme. The complexity of the theme is created or presented, or comes upon us, the readers, very easily, without any complications. And it creates a shock value. That's my last Duchess, painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece of wonder now. Fra Penol's hands work busily a day, and there she stands. The Duke points out to his last Duchess painting. It is, of course, in keeping with their style and the nobility and the wealth of these families. It is painted by a very renowned painter called Fra Pandolf, and the painting stands there. Though she is his last Duchess, it is very clear, it's placed at once before the readers, that the Duchess is no longer alive, looking as if she were alive. So it creates that meaning or that situation very clearly right at the very beginning. I call that place a wonder. Now Frank Madolph's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. The rhyme scheme is so easy in a heroic couplet. So the Duke says that is a beautiful painting. Like my other treasured heirlooms, this is also a prize heirloom. It is a wonder. And this Duke was so blind to the loveliness of the Duchess when she was alive, because she was just an innocent young girl. She was very transparent, and she was very um, vulnerable to any kind of act of kindness. She did not have that snobbish, that cold-blooded attitude towards everyone. She was a normal, healthy young girl, and the family, these inbred families, these centuries-old families, often breed a kind of sickness in their mind and their souls. They are not normal. Will it please you sit and look at her, I said, frapped and off by design, for ne'er read strangers like you that pictured countenances, the depth and passion of its earnest glance, but for myself they turn, since none puts by. And he says, I mentioned the name of the painter because you know that he was a very exclusive painter, a painter who painted only for the very best families. And the curtain I have drawn for you, but and seemed as if they would ask me if they durst, how such a glance came there, so not the first. Are you to turn and ask thus, sir? 'Twas not the husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek. Perhaps Fra Pandolf chanced to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint can never hope to reproduce the faint half flush that dies along her throat, such stuff. And the Duke goes on speaking, and you say, look at that painting. She looks as if she would speak in a moment, the light in her eyes, the blush on her cheek, this smile which is so full of joy. And so I have drawn the curtain for you. I don't draw it for everyone, and it is only meant for some people. So in other ways, he says, consider yourself honored that you are allowed to look at this painting of my last Duchess, and I've drawn the curtain for you myself. And the Duke goes on saying that you might marvel at the lifelike expression in her eyes and her flush on her cheek, and how Fra Pandolf has managed to recapture the loveliness. You are not the first one to ask. But the Duchess, that expression of joy and happiness was something which was always present on her face. It was not any particular moment. And she had the same kind of happiness which produced that flush or that blush on her lovely cheek for any kind of compliment. It was not reserved for him, and that rankled him. That she was so simple that she did not understand the privilege which she possessed because she was married to the Duke, while he himself did not value her innocence and her simplicity and her wholesomeness and the loveliness and the beauty of this young girl. For her, everything was full of joy because she was so untouched. She was so pure in heart and soul. And the Duke says that maybe Fra Pandolf says or gave her a compliment, or just she was, so easily impressed, and she was so impressionable that he might have said that your mantle is covering your wrist too much, or maybe he said that no paint can reproduce the loveliness of that blush on your cheek, and she would immediately show him the same smile. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. And he says, the Duke says, anything, any stuff, any compliment, anything was enough to make her happy. It was not only my loveliness and delight or happiness which she should have been aware of or conscious of. or been very proud about. That was my family's name. And she would not have considered it important enough, but she gave the same kind of importance to everything. Too easily impressed, she liked whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. Sir, 'twas all one, my favour at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west. The bough of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her. The white mule she rode with around the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech. So he says, anything at all. A bough of cherries, some lowly ranked servant would break for her, or if I was happy with her, or if she would exclaim with joy at the evening and the dawn and the coming of the closing of the day, the beautiful evening, the colors of the dawn and dusk. She rode around the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech or blush, at least. She thanked men good, but thanked somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift. So here he comes to the point. He says that anything was enough to make her happy. A bunch of cherries, some officious fool, that is someone who should not even have mattered to her. Or if I showed her some love, it was all the same to her. If she rode around the terrace on a donkey, it brought joy, squeals of joy. If she marveled at the loveliness of the evening or this morning, it was the same feeling of joy. And he said that it created a sense of anger in me. I was not happy. It was as if she did not value what I had given her, the gift of a 900 years old name. And it was as if a bunch of cherries or a ride on a donkey or anybody's compliment was the same. Here we are aware of the depth of the Duke's depravity, his arrogance, which has led him to absolute cruelty, to heartlessness. He was blind to the beauty of the Duchess's soul. For him, it was nothing. And it seemed to him that she was ungrateful. And she was not someone who valued the gift she had been given, the bride of a duke who belonged to a family which had a 900 years old history. So it was something which made him angry, and that anger simmered in him. Who'd stoop to blame this sort of trifling, even had you skill in speech, which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such an one, and say just this or that in your disgusts me, here you miss, or here exceed the mark. And if she let herself be lessoned so, not plainly set her wits to yours for sooth, and made excuse, even then would be some stooping, and I chose never to stoop. As he goes on speaking, he reveals even more of his mental sickness. And he says he does not consider her inexperience, her extreme youth, her complete innocence, and her simplicity. For him, it was an insult. It was a blow to his abnormal pride. It was as if the young Duchess, his bride, did not value him. She did not give him enough importance. She was not aware of how fortunate she was. And as the Duke says, that I was not one to sit down and explain things to her. It was beneath my dignity. It was beneath my position. And she should have learned it herself. And I neither had the patience nor inclination, and my pride was too great to come down to that level. I choose never to stoop. In this single line, he expresses his monstrous pride. Not that it was directed against his equal, a simple young girl, but because she was his wife, his Duchess, and because she should have been honored and she was his possession, and he would not bear this imagined insult from even her. Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, when I passed her, but who passed without much the same smile? And the Duke says that she was happy to see me. She always smiled, the same sweetness, the same innocence. But those smiles, she should have been only for me. For her, everything was a joy, everything was happiness. She smiled at everyone, and this was something which was like a blow to my dignity, to my pride, to my arrogance, to my consciousness of my family lineage, and the fact that she should have felt privileged and she should have been as cold and as aloof as suited her position in life. But we can imagine the young girl so happy with life, so unaffected, so simple, so full of joy and general love of life. She was not like the cold, calculating, aloof pride possessed by these aristocratic nobles, especially a man, an aristocrat, a nobleman, who was sick with this masculine pride. This grew, I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together. There she stands as if alive. And then the Duke says very casually, in a very coldly, that he gave commands and all smiles stopped altogether. That is, he had her executed for this imagined insult. He says it very casually and in a very offhand manner. There are no sense of regret, no remorse, no sorrow. And he is secure in his own belief that what he had done was in keeping with the family name. Will it please you rise? We'll meet the company below. Then I repeat, the Count, your master's known munificence, is ample warrant that no just pretense of mine for dowry will be disallowed. And then he goes on speaking. He says, come, let's go downstairs and meet the assembled people. And as he speaks, once more, we understand the situation. This messenger has come with a proposal from another noble aristocratic family. And as the Duke says, I will consider his proposal because his just munificence, his generosity in providing a very generous dowry for his daughter is quite assured. Though his fair daughter's self, as I avowed at starting, is my object. And we'll go together down, sir. Notice Neptune, though, taming a seahorse, though a rarity, which Klaus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. And then he says, we'll go down together. We'll go in the proper manner, and I will consider the proposal. I will accept it because I know that dowry is going to be very bountiful, very generous, and let's go down together. But before leaving the room, he says, look at this another rare object of art, which is Neptune taming a seahorse cast by the Klaus of Innsbruck. That is a famous sculptor. And that is the end of the poem. And as the poem closes, we are full of that impression of the inhumanity, the cruelty, the callousness, the extreme pride, and the abnormality in the Duke's mind. This poem, simple, though creates a very powerful theme and almost remains as an example of the mental sickness and the extreme arrogance which these noble blue-blooded families often possessed. And of course, the complete misogynistic attitude, but we must remember that there were other pieces of literature which also carried this sense of privilege, not to this same extreme, not to the murder which the Duke has immediately or very casually committed on his orders of a young innocent girl, because he felt that she did not come up to his status and to his expectations. It was wrong, of course, and the beauty of the soul of the Duchess completely comes through in this dramatic monologue. Remember Pamela or Virtue Rewarded, that novel, that epistolary novel by Richardson in 1740, which also carried the same kind of theme or the idea that Pamela is rewarded by marrying the man who was trying to rape her. So these were the attitudes of the times, and maybe though shocking now, we should read them in the same light, and we should try to, this gives an understanding of the particular feelings which were prevalent at that time. That is why deconstruction is not my kind of, or I do not prefer a complete deconstruction in reading a piece of literature. It is important to understand the background and the entire emotions which go behind writing a particular piece, and often it throws a light on that work. So I hope I have been able to make my meaning clear. Please like and subscribe to my channel, Literati. Thank you.